You okay?
Not particularly, but if you mean physically, then well enough. I'm not a smear on the ground and
He took a moment to evaluate himself.
nothing broken either. How about you?
Pen could feel a dull pain from her back, scrapes but nothing major. Her arms, similarly, were a bit cut up from the gravel.
All things considered, better than I'd expected.
She scanned the area. The sharply jutting rock formation sat in the middle of a densely forested area. They were surrounded by pine trees, she recognized, though growing a fair bit taller and thinner than they would have on Earth.
Human colony and an established one at that.
How can you be sure?
Pine trees for one, we like to bring our ecosystems with us, for good or ill. Beyond that,
She removed her breather and inhaled sharply.
I can breathe.
Gareth huffed and scrambled over her lap as she removed the mask.
That was an incredibly stupid thing to do.
I'm fine.
What if it were toxic?
Then they wouldn't have planted a pine forest, and as much as I'm enjoying looking at the trees, we should get moving, so…
She looked at him.
What?
He realized he was still sitting in her lap.
Apologies.
He managed to muster as he climbed off her and righted himself. The Terran trees towered even over his companion. He didn't like the way they made her seem small in comparison because it made him feel even smaller. He tried to peer past them, but everything was all foliage at a certain point. He couldn't see very far either with so many obstructions. Pen righted herself and cracked her neck.
All right, best we get moving. Trek isn't getting any shorter.
Moving? Where? How?
East towards the sun and on foot, unless you've got some crazy shit in your pockets.
East. That easy?
Gareth was incessantly grooming his head.
Well, one of us was watching out while we fell, and that's the way the ship went, so I figured…
She motioned generally in that direction.
We were just blown out the back of the nebula, fell out of the sky, and now we're lost in the middle of the wilderness with who knows what, and barely an idea of where our possibly dead friends are. And you're acting like we're on a short walk. Just go east, huh?
Let's take stock. The ship didn't explode, the damage was localized to the cargo bay, and Tonnant is no novice. The ship was losing altitude, but probably made an emergency landing somewhere east. So we head east and find them.
What if they're hurt?
Then we should head east and find them.
What if
What if… Doesn't matter.
they don't even know if we're alive?
You really think they might leave without even making sure?
Well, no, but you act like, how are you not freaking the fuck out?
Is freaking out going to help?
No.
Exactly, and in all honesty, we're better off than we could be. We know what way they went, and we're not on some barren rock. Trees and breathable air, well, breathable for me means society somewhere nearby.
Gareth still picked at his frills, but her certainty did help him calm down.
All right, I guess.
Hey, look at me.
She pulled his eyes to her own.
We're good. I've got us.
The look on her face was as sure as stone, solid. He supposed, compared to other things, this really wasn't the worst situation she'd gotten herself out of.
All right.
Let's move. You good to move?
Yeah, I should be good for a long while.
The two started off in the direction of the ship. Pen set a slower pace, but was still surprised to see Gareth meet it without complaint. After 10 minutes or so, she realized that speed wasn't going to be the issue. Gareth was starting to slow, and his skin and shell colors were changing.
Hold on. Pen, I'm getting too hot. My muscles are getting tired too.
All right, but we'll need to pick up again soon.
We've been jogging for a good while already.
It's been 10 minutes, Gareth.
Gareth heaved through his breather.
Exactly.
Gareth, we've got a long-ass way to go still. We've barely started.
What do you mean?
Gareth didn't even look for a place to sit, instead dropping to the ground cross-legged.
At a guess, we still have a good few hours of light left. I meant to use it all. Find a spot to rest when things start getting dark and keep going when the sun comes up.
Ours?
Gareth asked incredulously.
Guess that's not gonna work.
Absolutely not. I would collapse after another 10 minutes of this if I didn't die of heat stroke first.
That would be counterproductive.
He was still breathing hard, the hiss of his breather loud and rhythmic. His skin color did seem to be returning to normal, though.
I concur. You're fine after that.
After what, man?
Yeah.
Pen did have to think, though. Stopping every 10 minutes to rest wasn't going to work. She looked down at him.
Oh, God, that's not a good look. What's that face?
You think you can hold on better this time? Probably easier than when we were falling out of the sky.
I. Are you sure? I don't want to weigh you down.
Please, you weigh about as much as a couple of grapes. Definitely no more than my gear so lighter than I'm used to.
Okay, then. Don't push yourself, though, yeah?
Pen crouched down and turned around so that Gareth could climb onto her back. It was awkward, but he managed to wrap his primary arms around her neck and his legs around her midsection.
Heh, you're like a little backpack.
Pretty sure I should find that insulting, but given you're carrying me, I suppose I'll let it go.
Don't thank me yet. I'm not sure how comfortable a ride this'll be for you. Might be a bit bumpy.
With that, Pen stood and took off at a fair jogging pace. Gareth found himself clutching to her as she bounded and weaved through the trees. 1 hour passed, then another. Gareth couldn't believe it. Her pace barely wavered and her breathing was the same. At certain points, she would slow for a short time, but she never stopped. Gareth started to think his hold would give out before she'd tire. Around the 3rd hour, the sun started to dip low enough to notice. Shadows started to stretch, and the sky turned a burning orange. It almost surprised Gareth when Pen came to a stop. He'd gotten used to the constant movement. Pen took a moment to breathe, and held up her hand to quiet her passenger.
What?
Shh, listen.
Gareth focused his hearing. There was a sound filtering through the general din of the forest, the familiar sound of running water off to their right.
River.
Pen took off again. She picked her way through the trees and in only a few minutes came to a path cut in the forest by a slowly running river. Trees bowed over the water on either side, but a fair swath of sky was visible. Pen knelt down and reached for the water, but found a small hand smacking her about the head.
Stop it, stop it, stop it. Let me test the water before you go poisoning yourself, please.
It's not going to...
Please?
She sighed.
Fine, fine. Go ahead.
Gareth climbed down the tree that was Penelope and pulled a small tab out of the waist of his hab suit. After dipping it into the water, he plugged it into a small screen on his wrist and waited a moment. The screen lit up with a readout of the water's composition.
0.2% salt content, low amounts of other minerals. Single-celled organisms present.
He threw her a sharp look. Pen rolled her eyes.
Looks clean enough.
Don't have any way to purify it. If we had the ship, I could grab a purifier, but I seem to have forgotten to grab one before we departed. As it stands, though, we could both be submerged in the water and be fine. But it's got almost no sodium for me, and I'm not letting either of us contract some foreign parasite or whatever.
Do you have something that can hold water and is heat resistant?
My habsuit has a deployable helmet. I don't need immediately, I suppose.
He turned around and tapped a button on his neck. A bendable but solid glass-like material formed a fractal bubble around his head.
It's attached to the suit right here, though.
He pointed at the back of his neck.
Just hold still.
Pen said as she gripped the helmet.
Wait, I'm not so sure.
He stuttered, but Pen was already at work. She wrenched the helmet back and twisted, snapping it at the point of connection on the back of his hab suit. With a satisfying crack, it snapped off the suit.
I would appreciate it if you didn't just handle me like that, thank you very much. Why do you even need that?
Oh, settle down. I'm going to boil the water.
With what? We don't have any heat lamps?
The fire that I was going to start anyway.
How?
So without commentary from the peanut gallery, preferably.
Peanut? What? Look, I may not know what that is, but I know an insult when I hear one.
Do you?
Gareth didn't quite know how to respond. Pen took the silence as a chance to start setting up a workable camp. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would do for a short bit of rest.
Hey everyone, hope you loved the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more awesome sci-fi content. You can also support us by hitting the thanks button or becoming a channel member. Your generosity helps us bring you more stellar stories. Every bit counts. Thanks a bunch.